Let me tell you exactly what just happened, because they are not okay right now. Something shifted, something cracked open, and the version of you they thought they had completely figured out, that version is gone. You didn't just surprise them. You didn't just catch them off guard. You demolished the entire story they'd been telling themselves about you. The one where you were just soft, easy, available for whatever they decided to throw you your way. And now they are sitting with that. They are replaying it. They are looking at their hands like, wait, what just happened? Because they poked the wrong person one too many times. And when you finally moved, just once, everything they thought they knew about you collapsed. And here is what's wild. You didn't even have to go that hard. You didn't have to destroy anything. You just finally stopped pretending you were smaller than you are. And that alone was enough to shake their entire world. Here's the thing nobody tells you. There is a version of you that people get comfortable with. They build a whole picture or in their heads, who you are, how you respond, what you will tolerate, how far they can push before something happens. And for a long time, maybe a real long time, you let them have that picture. Not because it was true, not because you were actually that person, but because you were giving them something they didn't even recognize as a gift. It was a gift. You were giving them grace. And they mistook it for weakness every single time. Here is where the real story gets darker than most people want to admit. They thought they had trapped a small, shiny bird in a gilded cage. That was the role they assigned you. Something beautiful, something that would sing for them when they wanted entertainment, stay quiet when they wanted silence, and never question the bars they built around your life. They kept you there to decorate their world, to reflect well on them, and most importantly, to feel superior because they held the key. They genuinely believed the cage was your entire existence. They believed the version of you inside those bars was the full picture. But here is what they didn't understand. You were not growing into a bigger bird. You were not just getting stronger inside the cage they built. You were a golden dragon in a deep sleep. And everything they interpret as weakness, your stillness, your patience, your refusal to engage with their pettiness, that wasn't surrender. That was just you resting. That was just you conserving something they couldn't even comprehend. Your weakness was never weakness. It was patience so profound, it looked like passivity from the outside. Just from the outside, looked like. And now you've outgrown the bars. You didn't just break the cage, you melted it with the one breath. And they are not just shocked, they are terrified because they are realizing that the decoration they tried to own, the pet they thought they controlled, is actually the most powerful force they have ever encountered. They built a cage thinking it would contain you forever. Instead, they created the conditions for you to discover exactly what you were capable of. Maybe you know exactly the moment I'm talking about. That specific situation. At work, in a friendship, in a relationship, of course, somewhere in your life, where somebody kept crossing lines you had clearly draw. They'd say something slick, and you'd let it go. They'd pull some move and you'd absorb it. You'd watch them do it, and then there was this part of you deep down that already knew exactly what you could do about it. But you didn't. You just watched. You kept showing up with the same calm, the same patience, the same steady energy, and they read all of it that was weakness. They thought you were quiet because you had nothing to say. They thought you were patient because you had no other option. They thought your stillness was surrender. But you and I both know it wasn't. They were not mocking your weakness. They were mocking the version of you that they created to feel bad about themselves. That picture they built. It was never about who you actually were. It was about what they needed you to be so they could sleep at night. That stillness was control. That quiet was power. And they had absolutely no idea that they were sitting next to. The moment you stopped playing their game, you won. And that's exactly why they are panicking right now. It's kind of like that thing where someone's on the phone talking reckless to whoever will listen. Loud, bold, saying all kinds of things. And then they met that person face to face. And suddenly the whole energy in the room shifts. The voice drops, the posture changes, because now the reality is right in front of them, and everything they assumed starts falling apart in real time. That's what happened. That's what you just did. Except it wasn't even aggressive. It wasn't dramatic. You just let them see something real for the first time. And that was scarier to them than anything you could have screamed. Because here is what they are realizing right now. You were never the person they made up in their head. That whole comfortable version of you, the one that smiled when they said something off, the one that didn't respond when they pushed too hard, the one that kept showing up even after they took you for granted. That wasn't weakness. That was you operating from a completely different level than them. They were playing checkers. Yeah, checkers, thinking you were too confused to even find the board. And you were playing something else entirely. Something they didn't and they don't even have a name for. You didn't just grow a backbone. You built a fortress. And now they are standing outside the walls, realizing they were never inside to begin with. And I want you to really sit with this for a second. end with something else here, because this is where it gets genuinely interesting. There is this specific thing that happens in the body when you have been holding back for a long time, and then you finally stop holding. You feel it. It's almost like this release of pressure, like something that was compressed inside you just expanded into its actual shape. And the people around you, they felt it too, always. They don't always know what to call it, but they feel the room change. They feel the temperature shift. They feel something in their chest that makes them want to suddenly be more careful about what they say next. And that's not you being scary. No, that's you finally taking up the space you were always supposed to occupy. They are not concerned about you. They are terrified because they can't predict your next move anymore. That fake concern, the I am worried about you act, that was never about you, your well-being. That was civilians. That was them checking whether the cage was still holding. And now the cage is gone. And they have no idea what happens next. Think about what actually happened in the moment you stopped shrinking. You didn't explode, you didn't lose control, you didn't turn into someone else. You just let something through that had always been there. Maybe it was one conversation, maybe it was one decision, maybe it was just your tone or the way you held eye contact a little longer than usual, or the fact that for once you didn't immediately soften your response to make someone else more comfortable. Whatever it was real. It was undeniably, uncomfortably real. And they have not recovered from that yet. And here's what's happening on their end. Because I want you to understand what you are dealing with. They are going through something right now. They are going through this process of having to recalibrate their entire understanding of who you are and what you are capable of. And that process is uncomfortable. It's humbling in a way that almost hurts to watch. Because they have to go back through every single interaction they have had with you. Every time they said something they shouldn't have, every time they pushed past a boundary, every time they assumed they could get away with something, and recontextualize all of it. They have to look at all of that and realize you knew. This whole time you knew. You saw exactly what they were doing. You understood exactly what was happening. And you still chose not to respond to the way they deserved. You gave them grace they hadn't earned. And that realization, that's the part that's really getting to them. You finally called their bluff. And now they are standing there with an empty hand. And that posturing, all that confidence, all that swagger, it was borrowed. It was contingent on you staying small. And the second you didn't, the whole house of cards came down, because it's one thing to find out someone was stronger than you thought. That's a surprise, sure, but it's a completely different thing to find out that one was stronger than you thought. And they were choosing not to use that strength on the entire game, on you, the entire time. That's not just surprising, that's humbling in a way that reaches down into something deep. It makes you question everything. It makes you look at their relationship, their dynamic, the things you said and did through a completely different lens. And suddenly you are not just recalibrating your perception of that person. You are recalibrating your perception of yourself. And that is not a comfortable place to be. They are realizing that the quiet one in the room was actually the strongest one all along. And that rewrites their entire understanding of power. So let's talk about what they're actually sitting with right now. Because they have to go back through every single interaction they have had with you. Every time they said something they shouldn't have, every time they pushed past a boundary, every time they assumed they could get away with something and recontextualize all of it. They have to look at all of that and realize you knew this whole time. You knew. You saw exactly what they were doing. You understood exactly what was happening. And you still chose not to respond the way they deserved. You gave them grace they didn't and they hadn't actually earned. And that realization, that's the part that's really getting to them. You finally called their bluff. And now they are standing there with an empty hand. All that posturing, all that confidence, all that swagger, it was borrowed. It was contingent. And you staying small. And the second you didn't, the whole house of cards came down. Because it's one thing to find out someone was stronger than you thought. That's a surprise, sure, but it's a completely different thing to find out that someone was stronger than you thought. And they were choosing not to use that strength on you the entire time. That's not just surprising, that's humbling in a way that reaches down into something deep. It makes you question everything. It makes you look at the relationship, the dynamic, the things, all the things you said and did through a completely different lens. And suddenly, you are not just recalibrating your perception of that person. You are recalibrating your perception of yourself. And that is not a comfortable place to be. They are realizing that the quiet one in the room was actually the strongest one all along. And that rewrites their entire understanding of power. So let's talk about what they are actually sitting with right now. Because I think you deserve to understand the full weight of what just shifted. They are not just surprised. They are embarrassed. They are embarrassed that they misread you so completely. They are embarrassed that they acted out, that they said things, did things, pushed it in ways they thought they could get away with. And the whole time you were holding something back that you never had to hold back at all. You could have checked them so many times. You could have shut it down so many times. And you didn't. You let them keep going. You let them think they had power over you, when the truth is, you were the one with the power the entire time. And they know that now. And that's the part that's keeping them up at night. There is this image I keep coming back to, and I think it explains something. You know how jack in the box works, right? You wind it up, crank it, and it keeps going, and nothing happens. So you start to think nothing's going to happen. You get comfortable with the cranking. You start to think this is just what it does. And then when you least expect it, boom, and your whole nervous system lights up because you forgot. You forgot there was something in there. You forgot that all that cranking was building towards something. That's what they did to you. They kept cranking, they kept going, and you let them, yeah. And then you finally responded. They couldn't even process it at first because they had already decided you were not capable of it. They forgot what was in there. They kept poking the bear. And now that the bear is awake, they are looking for the exit, except there is no exit, because the dynamic they created, the dynamic they abused, is now permanently altered, and they have to sit with that. But here's the thing, you didn't forget. You knew exactly what was in there. That's the part that matters. That's the part that actually defines what just happened. This wasn't you losing control. This wasn't you finally snapping because you couldn't take it anymore. This was a conscious decision. This was you deciding that the moment had come, that this particular situation, this particular person, this particular line that got crossed, this was the one where grace had served its purpose and it was time for something else. And you made that call clearly, precisely, and it landed exactly the way it needed to land. You've reached the point of no return. There is no version of you that fits back into their small box, shiny box. That box is ash now, melted down with the rest of the cage. I need to say something about who you actually are, because I don't think you always see it. The kind of strength it takes to hold back the way you held back. That's not normal. Most people cannot do it. Most people, when they feel disrespected, when they feel pushed, when someone keeps taking shots at them, they react. They blow up. They make it a whole thing. They let the other person know immediately, loudly, publicly, that they crossed a line. And there is nothing wrong with that. But that's not what you did. You absorbed it, you processed it, you stayed collected, and you moved at your own pace, on your own timeline, when you decided it was time. That's not weakness. That's not patience born from fear. That's a kind of internal discipline that most people will never even understand, let alone possess. Your silence isn't a sign of defeat. It's a sign that you have outgrown the conversation. Dragons don't argue with the creatures crawling on the ground. They fly. And they are beginning to understand that now. They are beginning to see that what they thought was passivity was actually precision. And now, and this is the part I really want you to hear, to feel. Now the dynamic is completely different. Not because you are scary, not because you went off in some way you can't take back. Because they now have accurate information. Before they were operating on a fiction. Yeah, before. They had a story about you that was entirely made up, and they were making decisions based on that story. Now that story is gone. Now they have to deal with the real version, the full version, the version that was there the whole time, that they just couldn't see because they were too busy projecting weakness onto you. And real information changes behavior. Real information changes how people speak to you, how they approach you, what they think they can and cannot say in your presence. And you didn't have to threaten anyone. No, you didn't have to make any speeches. You just let reality show up. And reality did the rest. Here's something else I want you to sit with. The grace you showed. The fact that you held back for as long as you did. That's not something they are going to forget either, because it would have been so easy not to. It would have been completely justified for you to handle things differently, much earlier, much more directly. Anyone who knew the full picture would have understood, and yet you didn't. You gave that person more runaway than they deserved. You showed up with more patience than the situation warranted. And there is a part of them, even now, even in their embarrassment, that recognizes that. That's chalked up about it. That's thinking they could have handled me so differently this whole time. They could have exposed me. They could have made me look bad in front of people. They could have let me have it. And they didn't. Why didn't they? And the answer to that question is what's really getting under their skin. Because the answer is that you operate from a place they have never operated from. A place of genuine self-possession. A place where you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Where you don't need to make examples out of people just because you could. That's not weakness. That is genuinely one of the most powerful things a person can be. The illusion of your weakness was their only source of power. You just cut the cord. And now they are running on empty, trying to figure out who they even are without the dynamic they built their entire ego on. And I want to say one more thing, because I think it's important. This isn't just about them. This isn't just about whoever crossed you and is now sitting with the consequences of that. This is about you. and about something you know, now know that you cannot unknown. You know what you're capable of. You've felt it. You've seen how the room changes when you stop performing smallness. You have seen how people recalibrate when they realize who they're actually dealing with. And that knowledge, that lived, embodied, real knowledge, that's yours now. Nobody can take it, fake it. You cannot pretend you didn't experience it. And what you can do, what you do with it from here is completely up to you. You don't have to be loud about it. You don't have to announce it to anyone. You don't have to walk around differently or make sure people know what you are capable of. The people who need to know, they already know. The people who thought they had you figured out are already in the process of figuring out how wrong they were. And the people who were watching from the outside, some of them have been waiting for this moment for a long time. Yeah, because they could already see what those others couldn't. They already knew who you were. They already saw the discipline, the grace, the quiet depth of something who doesn't need to prove themselves to every single person who walks through the door. They thought you were a flicker. They found out you are a wildfire. And wildfires don't apologize for the light they bring. What changes now is simpler than you might think. It's just that you don't go back. You don't go back to making yourself smaller to make other people more comfortable. You don't go back to absorbing things you shouldn't have to absorb. You don't go back to smiling when something isn't funny, or staying quiet when something deserves a response, or letting people write a story about you that has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with who you are, who you actually are. That version of you served a purpose. It showed you what you are made of. It showed you what you are capable of. It showed them what they were dealing with. And now that chapter is done. Welcome to the era of no. It's the strongest word in the language, but it's the loudest one they have ever heard from you. Every time you say it, now they hear the echo of the cage melting. They hear the dragon waking up. And there is nothing they can do about it. They will never call you weak again, not because you made them afraid of you, not because, but because they finally saw you, the real you, the full version. And that image is not going anywhere. It's burned into how they see you now, how they will talk about you, how they will think before they speak next to you. You didn't destroy them. You didn't need to. You just stopped letting them be wrong about you. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. And here is the last thing I will say, because I think you need to hear it out loud. You didn't change. You were always this whole time, through all of it, through every moment of patience and every moment of grace and every moment of holding something back that you absolutely could have let through. You were always this. They just couldn't see it. Now they can. Now everybody can. And the version of you standing right now, finally letting that land, that's not new. That's just true. That's always been true. Stop waiting for an apology they will never give. No. Your success is the only closure you need. You're not difficult now. You're just no longer convenient for them. And from here, it stays true. No going back, no apologies for taking up space, no more making yourself fit into the small box someone else built for you. The cage is gone. The dragon is awake. You are done with that. And honestly, you've been done with that for a long time. You just let them catch up.